Shifting focus, President Moon Jae-in has kicked off his 4-day trip to India with a visit to the world's largest Hindu temple as a show of respect for the culture and the people of India. But dominating his agenda for the rest of his state visit will be the economy. Our Moon Gang-young, traveling with the president, files this report from New Delhi.
With a population of 1.3 billion and growing, and an economy expanding at the fastest pace in the world, India has been identified as a new frontier for South Korea for strategic and business interests. Now, with that in mind, South Korean President Moon Jae-in has kicked off his 4-day state tour of the South Asian country with a visit to the largest Hindu temple in the world. Welcomed with garlands, a tikka and kalwa, or holy thread on the wrist, President Moon and First Lady Kim Jong-suk admire the architecture and appreciate the culture and religion of the Indian people. Then, South Korea's first couple performed the Abhishek by offering holy water. Deeper understanding of each other's culture and strengthening people-to-people exchange. It's the first P of what South Korea has identified as the main bilateral agenda with India, the 3P+, people, prosperity, peace, and more. On the way out, the president leaves written in the visitor's book, "I pray for peace for Korea, India, and the world here at the Akshardham Temple where deities reside." But it's a second P, prosperity or economic ties, that's the primary focus of Mr. Moon's first visit to India as president. The South Korean president is traveling with a huge delegation of business leaders, and dominating the agenda on day 2 will be a South Korea-India business forum, which will likely open a new avenue for bilateral partnerships, and a visit to Samsung's new smartphone factory, set to be the world's largest, for ribbon-cutting ceremony. Samsung has invested over $710 million in the project, which adds capacity to the company's Noida plant, which makes smartphones, refrigerators, and flat-panel televisions. Guiding the president around the new plant and briefing the president will be Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong, the first encounter between President Moon and the leader of the nation's biggest conglomerate. It'll also be Lee's first official event since being released from the jail earlier this year after the Seoul Appeals Court suspended his 2.5-year prison term over bribery and embezzlement charges. President Moon's first full day in India is fully dedicated to expanding the economic ties with the world's second most populous nation that's fast becoming the most dynamic consumer market. Now, the president's economic aides say this reflects the importance of India, the last great untapped opportunity for export-driven South Korea, as it seeks to cut reliance on its two biggest trade partners. Traveling with the South Korean president, Moon Gang-young, Arirang News, New Delhi.
And this is President Moon's first visit to India since his inauguration last year. But why a trip to India? Our Hwang Ho-jun, also traveling with the president, gives us a brief introduction of the country.
There are many epithets to describe the country. But for South Korea's presidential office of Cheong Wa Dae, India's economic potential is its main focus.
The streets bustling with people, housing one of the youngest labor forces in the world and a significant technical capacity. The home of one of the world's most ancient civilizations has well positioned itself to become a rising economic powerhouse.
To elaborate a little more, 850 million of India's 1.3 billion population are considered economically productive. On top of that, 65% of the population is under 35. The IMF predicted its GDP growth rate to hit 7.4% in the fiscal year 2018-19. India is also known for taking the lead in new areas such as the Fourth Industrial Revolution and space air, all of which will likely lead the country to join the ranks of the US and China and become one of the, quote, G3 nations in the near future. But what makes India even more attractive is the fact that Seoul and New Delhi share no bad blood. In fact, the top office compared the situation to South Korea's bilateral relationship with China and how it took a hit during the deployment of the THAAD anti-missile system on the Korean peninsula. China imposed economic retaliation measures for a while, dealing a serious blow to the South Korean economy. In other words, Seoul expects that economic cooperation with India would not likely be easily shaken. President Moon Jae-in has emphasized time and time again that India is a significant part of his new southern policy, which is to expand Seoul's diplomatic horizon with ASEAN nations. Making the most out of India's potential, President Moon will seek to strengthen the 45-year-old diplomatic relationship by seeking a strategic partnership and future-oriented relations. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News, New Delhi.
Staying in New Delhi, the South Korean leader will be kept busier than ever, meeting with the country's top diplomat, the prime minister, and the president, not to mention a visit to a key Samsung facility. For an in-depth analysis of the policies between the two countries that align, we turn to our Cha Sang-mi.
President Moon Jae-in on Monday began the first official engagement of his state visit to a South Asian country by meeting with India's Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj, where he discussed his vision for the new Southern policy. Moon said South Korea's ties with India have been developing consistently since they upgraded their bilateral relations to a special strategic partnership in 2015, and added that he would like to expand their cooperation. His plan aims at deepening ties with India and other countries in the region to build a future partnership for what he dubs the three Ps: people, prosperity, and peace. Minister Swaraj welcomed President Moon's visit and said the Indian government also wanted to strengthen its relationship with South Korea. And this, an Indian expert says, is in line with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's push for his Act East policy.
If you try to understand India's Act East foreign policy, ASEAN is actually the center of India's Act East foreign policy. We have a range of contacts with ASEAN, be it connectivity, be it stronger economic ties, be it political contacts, and be it also security and defense contacts with some of the ASEAN members. It's growing over the years, and that actually establishes a common ground between India's Act East policy and Moon Jae-in's new southern policy.
The researcher called President Moon's foreign policy very pragmatic and said the Moon-Modi summit will not only pave the way for better South Korea-India cooperations on the bilateral level, but also on the regional level. A Korean expert in the field also emphasized that the role of India goes beyond economics.
India, among the BRICS countries, is the only nation that has productivity, marketability, and serves as a base to go out to the Middle East or Africa. India is a hub for politics, economy, defense, and diplomacy.
The expert urged the Korean government to approach India not only as an emerging market, but to view it as a closer diplomatic partner that can bridge the gap in Asia in many ways. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.